I mean, imagine spending, I don't know, 2,000 years building this massive, impenetrable fortress.
Right. The ultimate intellectual stronghold.
Exactly. It survives the rise and fall of empires. It survives plagues. It survives entire scientific revolutions. And every great architect of human thought has looked at this fortress and basically agreed, yes, that is solid. That will stand forever.
Until it doesn't.
Right. Because then, one afternoon in 1963, this guy walks up to it with a 2.5-page essay. He literally just taps the front door with his pen, and the entire fortress just crumbles to dust.
It's wild. It really is one of those rare moments where a single tiny paper just completely derails an entire academic discipline.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, it's a discipline that kind of needed derailing to figure out what it was actually trying to do in the first place.
Which, makes this the perfect starting point for where we are right now. Because for those of you who have been tracking with us, we're currently in the 6th installment of our ongoing multi-part series on philosophy.
Right, which we've organized into 4 distinct parts.
Exactly, 4 parts. So we're opening up a brand new chapter today, and it is arguably the most foundational topic we could possibly explore before we look at literally anything else.
It is the absolute baseline, because before we can, dive into the grand sweeps of historical eras or dissect the specific worldviews of individual thinkers later in this series.
We have to figure out the ground rules first.
Yeah, we have to establish the core tools and the rules of reality itself. In philosophy, that specific realm is called epistemology.
Epistemology.
Right. It's the study of how we know what we know. Because if you don't understand the mechanism of knowledge itself, I mean, you can't really make reliable claims about science or ethics or history.
You're just building a house on sand at that point.
Exactly. You have to pour the concrete first.
So the primary mission of today's deep dives is to answer one deceptively simple question for you all. What exactly is the definition of knowledge?
It sounds so basic, right?
It really does. I know that sounds like something you'd find in a dictionary, read once, and just never think about again. But the deeper you look into the sources we've pulled together for you today...
And we have a huge stack today.
Oh, yeah. We've got the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the Routledge Encyclopedia, various academic papers, educational transcripts. And the more you read through this stuff, the more you realize that knowledge is just an incredibly slippery concept.
It is notoriously difficult to pin down.
So here's the game plan. We are going to painstakingly build the classical definition of knowledge, brick by brick. Then we're going to watch it get absolutely destroyed by that 1963 paper we mentioned.
The Great Demolition.
Yeah. And finally, we're going to sift through the rubble to see if the concept of knowledge can ever actually be put back together again.
It is a fascinating trajectory. But, before we even attempt to define knowledge, we actually have to agree on what type of knowledge we are talking about.
Wait, there are different types.
Oh, absolutely. The English language is honestly a bit clunky here because we use the exact same word, to describe vastly different cognitive relationships with the world.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Furthermore, we have to agree on what a philosophical definition actually requires because, well, we aren't just looking for a synonym here.
Right, because if I say, I know how to ride a bike, and then 5 minutes later I say I know that water is H2O, I'm using the exact same verb.
Right.
But the mechanism in my brain and my relationship to the reality I'm describing is just entirely different in those two scenarios.
Precisely. And our sources generally break down these cognitive relationships into 3 main categories. So the first is practical knowledge.
Okay.
This is often called know-how. It's entirely ability-based. It's the competence to execute a task. Riding a bike, swimming, playing the piano.
So it's muscle memory, kind of.
Basically, yeah. What is critical to understand about practical knowledge is that it doesn't require language, and it isn't even exclusive to humans. As one of the academic papers points out, an ant knows how to walk.
Oh, sure.
A dog knows how to catch a frisbee. They possess practical knowledge. But they don't possess the conceptual, mathematical awareness of the physics involved in those actions.
That makes sense. I wonder, actually, if you could even say that a modern AI or a machine has practical knowledge. Like a self-driving car knows how to stay in a lane. Right?
Oh, that's a great example.
But it doesn't understand the existential concept of a highway. It just has the operational skill.
That is a great modern parallel. The skill exists independently of the comprehension of the skill. Now, the second category is knowledge by acquaintance.
Knowledge by acquaintance. Okay.
Yeah. This is experiential familiarity. It's when you know a person, a place, or a sensation through direct personal contact.
Like knowing what dark chocolate tastes like.
Exactly. Knowing the taste of dark chocolate, or knowing the city of London because you've actually walked its streets, or personally knowing a celebrity.
So if I read like 100 books about the exact chemical compound of an apple, I might have a lot of data about apples, but I don't have knowledge by acquaintance until I literally take a bite out of one.
Exactly. The philosopher Bertrand Russell wrote extensively about this. You simply cannot capture knowledge by acquaintance perfectly in a declarative sentence.
Because the knowledge is the experience itself.
Right. But here is the catch. Neither practical knowledge nor knowledge by acquaintance is what we are actually trying to define today.
Okay, so what is the target? We've eliminated two. What is the third category?
The third category is strictly propositional knowledge. Or, know that.
Know that.
Yeah. This is factual knowledge that can be expressed in a declarative sentence, a proposition. So I know that Dave is at home, or I know that Paris is the capital of France.
Or I know that the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius.
Exactly. This is the foundation of theoretical understanding, of science, of truth claims. It is the most paradigmatic type of knowledge in analytic philosophy.
So we are strictly hunting for the definition of propositional knowledge.
Yes.
But you mentioned earlier that we need to establish the rules of the definition game. Because in philosophy, providing a few examples or a loose description just doesn't cut it.
No, not at all. We are looking for something structurally flawless.
Right.
We are looking for what philosophers call necessary and sufficient conditions. This is how analytic philosophy seeks to map concepts perfectly, ensuring there are no gaps and, no overlaps that shouldn't be there.
Let's make this really concrete for the listener, because this is a crucial tool for literally everything that follows. I want to use the classic analogy from our educational transcripts, the definition of the word bachelor.
Ah, yes, the classic.
Right. So if I tell you that the definition of a bachelor is an unmarried man, I have just provided the necessary and sufficient conditions. Let's break that down for everyone.
Go for it.
Unmarried is a necessary condition. You literally cannot be a bachelor if you are married. That is a hard boundary. Man is also a necessary condition. You cannot be an unmarried golden retriever and be a bachelor. You must meet both of those criteria. So they are individually necessary.
But the real test is the second half of the rule. Are they jointly sufficient?
Yes, because if you find an entity in the universe that meets both of those necessary conditions, it is unmarried and it is a man. That is all the information you need.
It's locked in.
Exactly. That is sufficient to guarantee that the entity is a bachelor. Every single unmarried man is a bachelor, and every single bachelor is an unmarried man.
The Venn diagram is just one single perfect circle.
Right. So in our intellectual murder mystery today, our goal is to find the necessary and sufficient conditions for knowledge. We need a formula that maps onto reality just as perfectly as unmarried man maps onto bachelor.
Which brings us to the reigning champion of epistemology. For over 2 millennia, the greatest minds in philosophy generally agreed that they had actually found that perfect formula.
Wow. 2,000 years.
Yeah, tracing all the way back to ancient Greece, specifically to Plato's dialogue called the Theaetetus, a consensus emerged that propositional knowledge could be defined by 3 distinct components.
Okay, what are they?
The formula is knowledge is justified true belief, or the JTB theory.
Justified true belief. JTB. Okay, let's really put this under a microscope and examine each of these 3 pillars to see why generations of philosophers thought they had completely solved the puzzle.
Let's start with the T-truth.
Truth. Okay.
The truth condition is generally considered the least controversial part of the JTB formula. The premise is very straightforward. You cannot know something that is false.
Okay, yeah.
Knowledge requires a cognitive contact with objective reality. If a proposition does not correspond to the actual state of the universe, it cannot be known, regardless of how intensely you feel about it.
I want to make sure I'm getting this because people say things all the time like, I just knew it was going to rain when it doesn't actually rain. But philosophically, they are misusing the word.
Exactly. They are expressing a strong belief, not knowledge.
The sources give a very stark example here that I love. Nobody in the world can know that Winston Churchill won the 1996 U.S. presidential election.
Right.
Why? Because it simply isn't true. Bill Clinton won in 1996. Winston Churchill had been dead for over 30 years.
Right. It's just a non-starter.
You might hallucinate that Churchill won. You might have a vivid dream that he won. You might even be lied to by a teacher and firmly believe he won. But you cannot know that he won. False knowledge is a literal oxymoron.
That is the absolute core of the truth condition. Truth is the objective anchor. The universe has to cooperate with your mind.
So the external world has to align.
Yes. Now let's move to the internal side of things. The be belief. To know a proposition, you must mentally accept it. You must hold it to be the case. Knowledge, in this view, is a mental state of affirmation.
Okay, this seems intuitively obvious to me. It wouldn't make any sense for me to say to you, I know today is Monday, but I absolutely do not believe today is Monday.
Right, that just sounds bizarre.
It sounds like cognitive dissonance or just a grammatical error.
Yeah.
If you possess knowledge, you inherently believe the thing you know.
Generally, yes. Though, if we are being exhaustive, it is worth noting that there is a very tiny, persistent minority dissent on this point in the philosophical literature.
Wait, really? Someone argues you can know something without believing it.
Yeah, some thinkers have tried to construct these weird edge cases where knowledge might exist without active belief.
Oh, is this the trivia test example from the sources? I actually struggled with this one a bit when I was reading it.
Let's walk through it together. Imagine you learned in elementary school that the planet Pluto has 5 moons.
Okay.
But decades pass, and you completely forget this fact consciously. Like if someone asked you on the street, you would honestly say, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Then you find yourself taking a high-pressure trivia test, and the question appears on the screen. How many moons does Pluto have? You stare at the paper, your mind is totally blank, and you just randomly guess 5, feeling completely unconfident. You don't believe your answer is correct. But it is correct. Did you know it?
See, I would argue, no, you didn't know it. You just got lucky.
Right.
But I can see how some philosophers might argue that deep down in your neural pathways, that was a manifestation of latent knowledge bubbling up, even though you lack the conscious psychological state of belief.
Exactly. It's an interesting anomaly, but as you pointed out, it remains a fringe view. The vast majority of epistemologists maintain that knowledge absolutely implies belief. You have to buy into the proposition. You have to endorse it.
Okay, so that gives us 2 pillars. True belief, but is true belief sufficient for knowledge?
What do you think?
I can definitively answer that no. Because you can have a belief, and that belief can happen to be objectively true, but it might just be a massive fluke.
Right.
And this is where the heavy lifting comes in. This is where we introduce the J justification.
We have to go back to Socrates for this.
Oh, Socrates.
Yeah. He noted that knowledge seems to have a surplus value over merely having a true belief. He spoke metaphorically about how true belief is like a beautiful statue, but if it isn't tied down or tethered to the ground, it will just fly away.
I like that image.
That tether is justification. It is the evidence, the logical reasoning, the reliable cognitive process that essentially connects your internal belief to the external truth.
Let me use the Plato example again, but let's change the scenario.
Yeah.
Suppose I am completely ignorant of astronomy. I've never read a book about space. Someone asks me how many moons Pluto has.
Okay.
Now, it just so happens that my absolute favorite number, my lucky number, is 5. So I confidently declare Pluto has 5 moons. I firmly believe it. And objectively, it is true.
Right.
Do I know that Pluto has 5 moons? Intuitively, any rational person would say no. I made a lucky guess that happened to map onto reality.
Or take another example drawn directly from our sources. Suppose you firmly believe that the ancient Incan city of Machu Picchu is located in Peru.
Okay, which is a true belief.
It is a true belief. But suppose your only reason for believing this is that both the word Machu and the word Peru end in the letter U.
Wow.
Right. Your belief is true, but your reasoning is entirely absurd. Your true belief is not properly justified, therefore it does not amount to knowledge. You are right, but for entirely the wrong reasons.
Okay, so justification is the crucial ingredient that filters out the lucky guesses, the superstitious assumptions, and just faulty logic. It's the mechanism that says, I am right and I have good, solid reasons for being right.
Exactly. And historically, the major debates in epistemology weren't really about whether JTB was the right formula. Almost everyone agreed it was.
They did.
Yeah, the intense debates were just about what constituted good justification.
Okay.
René Descartes, for example, argued for infallibilism. He believed that your justification must be absolutely mathematically certain with zero logical room for doubt. If you could even imagine being wrong, you weren't justified.
But that standard is insanely high. Like, I can imagine that I'm dreaming right now, which means I can't be infallibly certain I'm even sitting in this room with you.
Which is exactly why most contemporary philosophers eventually settled on fallibilism.
Fallibilism.
Yeah. They argued that your justification just needs to be very strong, reasonable, and based on excellent evidence, even if it's not absolutely, flawlessly, mathematically perfect.
Okay, so to summarize the grand 2,000-year-old consensus of human thought, if you believe a proposition, and the proposition is objectively true in reality, and you have solid, reasonable, logical justification for believing it, then congratulations, you have achieved knowledge.
Exactly.
The JTB formula seemed completely airtight. It provided the necessary and sufficient conditions. The case was closed.
The case was closed all the way up until 1963.
And here's where the story gets absolutely wild. Edmund Gettier, who at the time was a relatively obscure philosopher at Wayne State University, publishes a paper titled, "Is Justified True Belief Knowledge?"
Such a modest title for what it did.
Right. As we mentioned at the very start of the show, this paper is only 2.5 pages long.
Mm.
But those 2.5 pages contained an intellectual bomb so profound that epistemology has literally never been the same since.
Gettier's goal was very specific here.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to say that truth, belief, or justification were bad things.
Right.
He wanted to prove that JTB is necessary, but it is not sufficient.
Okay.
He wanted to demonstrate that you could have a situation where a person has a completely justified, entirely true belief, but every single person looking at the situation would intuitively agree that the person does not possess knowledge.
He wanted to break the Venn diagram.
Precisely. And he achieved this by constructing some incredibly clever, almost devious thought experiments.
Right. I want to really dig into his most famous example. This is known in the literature as Case 1, or the 10 coins case.
Yeah.
For you listening, I want you to pay very close attention to the logic here, because it is a trap, and it is brilliant.
Let's set the scene. We have two men, Smith and Jones. They are both sitting in the waiting room of a corporate office. They are both waiting to be interviewed for the exact same job position. They are the only two candidates.
Got it. Smith and Jones, competing for one job.
Now, earlier that morning, the president of the company pulled Smith aside and privately told him, listen, Jones's resume is incredible. Jones is going to get the job.
Ouch. Okay.
Furthermore, while they're sitting in the somewhat tense waiting room, Smith watches Jones empty his pockets to count his loose change. Smith clearly, visibly sees Jones count exactly 10 coins and then put them back into his pocket.
Okay, so Smith is a rational, logical guy. He takes these two pieces of information and he synthesizes them into a specific proposition in his mind. He thinks to himself, the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket.
Let's pause right there and run this through the JTB checklist.
Okay, let's do it.
Does Smith believe the proposition that the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket?
Yes, absolutely.
Is he justified in this belief?
Yes. He has direct verbal testimony from the president of the company, and he has direct empirical visual evidence of the coins. Under any normal standard of fallibilism, his justification is incredibly strong.
So he has a highly justified belief. But we don't know if it's true yet. So what happens next?
Here's the twist, and it's a double twist.
Oh, yeah.
First, it turns out the president of the company was wrong. Or maybe he just changed his mind at the last second. When the final decision is made, it is actually Smith who gets the job, not Jones.
Right.
Second, entirely unbeknownst to Smith, Smith also happens to have exactly 10 coins buried deep in his own pocket. He hasn't counted them, he doesn't know they are there, but objectively they are there.
I remember reading this for the first time and just staring at the page.
Me too. Let's reevaluate Smith's proposition. His proposition was, the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket. Is that proposition true?
It is 100% factually accurate. Smith is the man who got the job, and Smith has 10 coins in his pocket. The statement perfectly corresponds to reality.
So Smith believed it. The statement was objectively true, and he was highly justified in believing it based on the president's word and seeing Jones's coins. Smith has a justified true belief.
He hits all three criteria.
But, and this is the crux of the whole deep dive today, does Smith know that the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket?
And this is the genius of Gettier. When you ask that question, the intuitive, immediate answer from almost anyone, whether they are a philosopher or a plumber, is no. Smith does not know it.
Right. Why?
Because the reason Smith had for believing the proposition, Jones's stellar resume, Jones counting his coins, had absolutely nothing to do with why the proposition actually ended up being true Smith getting the job, Smith's hidden coins.
It was a cosmic, ridiculous coincidence. It was a total fluke. Smith was right, but he was right for completely the wrong reasons. His internal justification was totally structurally disconnected from the external truthmaker of the situation.
Which forces a devastating logical conclusion. If Smith has justified true belief, but Smith does not have knowledge, then justified true belief does not equal knowledge.
The formula is broken.
Yes, the two circles of our Venn diagram don't overlap perfectly anymore. Justified true belief is not a sufficient definition for knowledge.
And just like that, a 2,000-year-old pillar of philosophy collapses. It's almost funny how simple it is when you finally lay it out, but it literally created an existential crisis in epistemology. Because if GTB isn't knowledge, then what on earth is?
Exactly. And to prove that the 10 coins case wasn't just some weird, isolated fluke of language, philosophers in the wake of Gettier's paper started dreaming up a whole bestiary of these scenarios.
A bestiary, I like that.
They are collectively known as Gettier cases, and they all share a specific mutated DNA. They exploit the gap between fallible human justification and objective truth.
Let's explore some of these other Gettier cases from the sources, because they're honestly kind of fun, and they really help cement the concept in your mind.
Let's do it.
One of the most famous ones comes from the philosopher Carl Janet, and was later popularized by Alvin Goldman. It's known as the fake barns case. I struggled with this one initially, so let's walk through it carefully.
Picture this.
Yeah.
You are driving down a rural country road. You are looking out the window, enjoying the scenery, and you see a red barn out in a field. You point at it and say to your passenger, "There is a barn."
Okay, simple enough.
Now, you believe there is a barn. It is true that there is a barn there. And you are justified in your belief because your eyesight is perfectly fine. It's broad daylight, and you are looking directly at a bar.
Standard JTB. My senses are working. Reality is cooperating. I should have knowledge.
But here's the secret context.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to you, you are driving through a very bizarre county where the eccentric locals have built hundreds of incredibly realistic fake barn facades.
Like movie props.
Exactly like movie props. They look exactly like real barns from the road, but if you walked up to them, you'd see they're just painted cardboard held up by 2x4s.
Okay, so if I look at a fake barn and say, there's a barn, I just have a false belief. No GTB.
Correct. But here is what makes it a Gettier case. By pure dumb luck, the specific object you happened to look at when you pointed out the window was the only real barn in the entire county.
Oh, well.
Everything else for miles was a fake, but you happened to lock eyes on the one genuine article.
So, again, I have a justified true belief. My eyes work. It is a barn. But do I know it's a barn? When I first read this, I wanted to say, yes, I do know it. I'm looking right at it.
It's a natural reaction to want to say that, but let's look at the counterfactuals. The consensus in epistemology is that you don't know it, because your justification is incredibly fragile in this specific environment.
Right.
If you had looked out the window 5 seconds earlier or 5 seconds later, you would have looked at a cardboard fake, formed the exact same visual belief, and you would have been dead wrong.
So my belief being true in this specific instance is entirely a matter of luck.
Yes. Your visual justification, while normally reliable, was secretly compromised by a highly deceptive environment.
I see it now. The reliability of my senses has been hijacked by the context. I'm right, but only because I got lucky with my timing. It gives me a headache, but it makes sense.
They are designed to give you a headache?
Let's do one more classic Gettier case from the stack of sources. This is the Nogat and Havit case, sometimes just called the Ford case.
This one is very relatable if you've ever worked in a corporate office.
Very true. So imagine you have a coworker named Nogat. Nogat suddenly starts bragging to everyone that he just bought a brand new Ford. He shows you the keychain with the Ford logo.
He's really selling it.
Right. He goes all in. You look out the window and see him driving a new Ford into the office parking lot. He even offers you a ride in it during lunch.
Okay, so based on all this overwhelming solid evidence, you form a very reasonable, highly justified belief. Someone in my office owns a Ford.
But Nogat is a pathological liar. He doesn't own the car. He rented it just to show off and create a false image. He faked the whole thing.
So your justification is based entirely on a massive deception. If that were the end of the story, your belief would just be false.
But there is another coworker, someone who sits down in the basement whom you barely ever speak to, named Havit. And Havit, quietly and without telling anyone, actually does own a Ford.
This is so devious. Let's run the checklist. Do you believe someone in your office owns a Ford?
Yes.
Is it true that someone in your office owns a Ford?
Yes, because the guy in the basement have at.
Is your belief justified?
Yes, because of Nogott's elaborate, convincing display.
But you know it.
No, because once again, you are right by accident. You formed a belief based entirely on Nogott's lies, but the belief is only true because of Havit's secret purchase.
If we pull back and synthesize the core theme uniting all these Gettier cases, the 10 coins in the pocket, the cardboard fake barns, the lying coworker with the rented Ford, we arrive at a really profound philosophical concept.
The sources call it epistemic luck.
Yes, epistemic luck.
In every single scenario, the believer is technically correct but for the wrong reasons. The justification is somehow fundamentally severed from what actually makes the belief true in the real world. It is a fortuitous, lucky accident.
And epistemology hates luck.
It does.
The whole point of defining knowledge is to separate truth from luck. So once Gettier demonstrated that the JTB formula actually allows for epistemic luck, it meant the formula was inadequate.
And thus began an absolute arms race in academic philosophy. It was a desperate, decades-long scramble to patch the hole in the JTB ship before it sank.
The sources referred to these philosophers as the fixers. Their goal wasn't to throw out JTB entirely, but to add a fourth condition.
The idea was to create a JTB plus X formula. If they could just figure out what X is, they could finally banish epistemic luck and perfectly define knowledge once and for all.
Let's walk through some of the major attempts to fix the definition. Attempt number 1 is perhaps the most intuitive. It's called the no false premises rule, championed by philosophers like David Mallet Armstrong.
When I read about this one, I initially thought, oh, they solved it. This makes total sense.
The logic is very straightforward. Armstrong looked at the original Gettier cases and noticed a distinct pattern.
What was it?
Well, in the 10 coins case, Smith's belief was based on the false premise that Jones would get the job. In the Ford case, your belief was based on the false premise that Nogott owned a Ford.
So the fix is simple. We just say that knowledge is justified true belief as long as it wasn't inferred from a false belief.
All right.
If there's a false stepping stone anywhere in your chain of logic,
Right.
it instantly disqualifies the whole thing from being knowledge. It feels elegant. It seems to isolate exactly what goes wrong in the cognitive process.
It does feel elegant, but unfortunately, it fails completely.
Of course it does.
And it fails because philosophers are very good at inventing new thought experiments. They quickly realized they could create new Gettier cases where there is no logical inference and no false premise being relied upon whatsoever.
Right. This is where the robot dog case comes in, and it completely ruins Armstrong's fix. Let's imagine you are standing at the edge of a park. You look into the park, and you see what looks exactly like a golden retriever.
Okay, golden retriever.
You don't perform any complex logical inference. You don't think A implies B. You just have direct, immediate visual perception, and you form the spontaneous belief. There's a dog in the park.
There are no underlying premises here. It is direct observation. But because this is epistemology, we have to make it a Gettier case.
We do.
The object you are looking at is actually an incredibly realistic, high-tech robot dog being tested by an animatronics company.
So if that was all, my belief would just be false. But to create the Gettier trap, we add the truth maker. Unbeknownst to you, entirely concealed behind a large oak tree just a few feet away from the robot, there's an actual, living, breathing, real dog sleeping in the grass.
Let's test the new formula. JTB plus no false premises. Do you believe there is a dog in the park?
Yes.
Is it true?
Yes, the sleeping dog is there.
Is it justified by your visual evidence?
Yes.
Did you infer this from a false premise?
No, it was direct visual perception. There was no conscious logical chain. So according to the no false premises rule, you should have perfect knowledge.
But intuitively, you still don't. It is still massive epistemic luck.
Exactly. I just got lucky that a real dog was hiding behind a tree while I was staring at a robot. The no false premises fix fails to solve the underlying problem of luck.
Which brings us to attempt number 2 from the fixers. This is defeasibility theory, primarily proposed by Keith Lehrer and Thomas Paxson.
Defeasibility theory. Okay.
This theory is a bit more complex, but it's a fascinating way of looking at how information exists in the world. They suggested that knowledge requires an undefeated JTB.
Undefeated JTB. Break that down for me. What does that actually mean in practice?
It introduces the concept of a defeater. A defeater is a piece of true information out there in the world that, if you were to learn it, would completely destroy your justification.
Oh, I see.
Defeasibility theory says that for a justified true belief to count as knowledge, There must be no true information anywhere in the universe that could defeat your justification.
Let me test that against the fake barns case to see if it works. I look at the one real barn and believe it's a barn. Is there a defeater out there?
Yeah.
Yes. The true information that the county is filled with 99 cardboard fake barns. If someone told me that fact, my justification would be instantly defeated. I wouldn't trust my eyes anymore.
Right.
So, defeasibility theory correctly identifies that I don't have knowledge in the fake barns case. It seems to work.
It works beautifully for the classic Gettier cases. But it runs into a massive fatal problem when we consider what epistemologists call misleading defeaters.
Yes, the Tom Grabbit case. This is where defeasibility theory just goes completely off the rails into absurdity.
It really does.
Imagine you are in a local library, and you clearly see a man named Tom Grabbit steal a rare book. You know Tom personally, you have excellent vision, and you see him stuff the book in his coat in plain sight. You form the justified true belief, Tom stole the book.
Your justification is rock solid.
But here comes the misleading defeater.
Right. Unbeknownst to you, Tom has a mother who is a compulsive liar and deeply mentally unwell. And right at this exact moment, she is sitting in a psychiatric asylum across the country, falsely telling a nurse, Tom didn't steal that book. He is out of the country on vacation. It was his evil twin brother who stole it.
The mother is totally lying. She's making it up entirely.
Yeah.
But the fact that she is saying this is a piece of true information out there in the world.
Yes. The statement itself exists.
And if you, standing in the library, somehow heard her say it, it might make you doubt your own eyes. It might introduce a seed of doubt. It might defeat your justification.
Exactly. So, according to the strict rules of defeasibility theory, because this potentially defeating information simply exists in the world, your belief cannot be knowledge.
But that's absurd. I'm standing right there. I literally watched him steal the book. The ravings of a compulsive liar hundreds of miles away shouldn't retroactively strip me of my direct observational knowledge.
It feels very wrong.
If we accept defeasibility theory, it excludes way too much real, everyday knowledge. Because in a world of billions of people, there is almost always some misleading evidence floating around out there somewhere.
This highlights the deep frustration of the JTB plus X project. Every time someone proposes a clever fourth condition to block epistemic luck, someone else invents an even more bizarre thought experiment to break it.
It starts to feel like a degenerating research program. You're just playing holes in a dam that is actively crumbling.
Which means it might be time for some radical rethinks. If we can't patch the blueprint, maybe the foundation itself is fundamentally flawed.
Right. In the sources, we see a shift where philosophers start looking at theories that either redefine the concept of justification entirely or just throw it out the window altogether.
Let's look at one of the most extreme reactions, infallibilism. We touched on this earlier with Descartes, but it was revived by thinkers like Richard Kirkham.
Infallibilism. Okay.
Infallibilism says we don't need a confusing fourth condition. We just need to define justification much, much more strictly than we have been. A belief is only justified if the evidence absolutely guarantees its truth.
We are talking about absolute 100% bulletproof certainty.
Precisely. If it is even logically possible in any universe that you are wrong, you do not have justification, and therefore you do not have knowledge.
Wow.
This completely eliminates the Gettier problem because epistemic luck requires a gap between your evidence and the truth. Infallibilism closes that gap entirely.
But the downside is apocalyptic for our daily lives. Because if we adopt infallibilism, we invite Cartesian radical skepticism. Think about it. Are you absolutely infallibly certain that you are listening to this deep dive right now?
I feel like I am.
But how do you know you aren't just a brain floating in a vat of nutrients, being fed electrical stimuli by a supercomputer to simulate this entire reality?
You don't. You cannot mathematically prove you aren't a brain in a vat.
So under infallibilism, you don't know anything about the external world? I don't know I have hands. I don't know the sun will rise tomorrow. I don't know that other people possess consciousness.
It's a very lonely philosophy.
It sets the standard so impossibly high that knowledge basically ceases to exist outside of maybe pure mathematics. We need a theory that allows for fallible knowledge, the kind of messy, practical knowledge regular humans actually use to navigate the world.
Which brings us to a major paradigm-shifting pivot in late 20th century epistemology, reliabilism. This is a form of what is called externalism, heavily championed by Alvin Goldman.
Okay, we need to pause and define those terms. What is the difference between internalism and externalism? Because this seems to be a major fork in the road for philosophy.
It is the major fork. Traditional JTB and everything we've discussed so far is internalist.
Internalists.
Right. It assumes that justification has to be accessible to your conscious mind. It's based on mental states internal to you, your logical reasons, your weighing of evidence, your conscious deductions. You have to be able to explain why you are justified. Okay.
Reliabilism throws that entirely out the window. It says, forget internal mental reasons. Focus on external causes in the physical world.
So under reliabilism, knowledge is redefined. It is simply a true belief produced by a reliable cognitive process.
Yes. Think of it like a thermometer. A thermometer doesn't have conscious reasons for reading 70 degrees. It doesn't weigh evidence. It just reliably reacts to the physical environment.
Because that's what it was built to do.
Exactly. Under reliabilism, your brain is just a very complex thermometer. If your visual system is biologically working properly and you are in normal lighting, vision is a reliable process. It produces a true belief, and that is knowledge.
You don't need to be able to logically articulate your justification. The physical mechanism just needs to be reliable.
I can see why this became so popular. It's a very attractive theory because it finally explains how non-human animals and very small children can possess knowledge.
Oh, right, like the dog and the frisbee. Exactly. Or, a dog knows exactly where its food bowl is in the kitchen. It doesn't have internal logical justification, it can't construct a syllogism, but its spatial memory is a reliable cognitive process. Reliabilism grounds knowledge in biology and physics rather than abstract logic.
It is a powerful theory. But reliabilism has its own set of deeply stubborn flaws. For one, how do we define what makes a process reliable?
It's a fair question.
Is it a statistical frequency? Does my vision have to be right 90% of the time or 99% of the time? And more importantly, how does reliabilism account for knowledge that doesn't seem to have a physical causal connection to the brain?
Oh, this is a great counterpoint from the sources. Mathematical knowledge.
Right. I know that 2 + 2 = 4, but the abstract concept of the number 2 is not a physical object. It didn't physically bump into my optic nerve and cause a belief in my neurons.
There is no physical causal mechanism connecting abstract mathematical truths to your brain state. So how can a causal, external, reliable process explain pure, abstract mathematical knowledge? It seems we still desperately need some form of internal, logical justification for a priori truths.
It's a significant hurdle. Let's pivot and look at another radical rethink. Virtue epistemology, developed by brilliant thinkers like Linda Zagzebski and Ernest Sosa.
Virtue epistemology, okay.
This approach tries to solve the luck problem by focusing not on the process, but on the character or the intellectual skill of the knower themselves.
The archer analogy, I love this one because it makes the abstract so visual.
Right. So imagine an archer shooting at a target. The archer fires the arrow and it hits the bullseye perfectly. But why did it hit the bullseye? There are 2 distinct possibilities.
Possibility 1, the archer is terrible. They close their eyes, fire randomly, and completely miss the target. But at that exact moment, a freak hurricane gust of wind catches the arrow and blows it perfectly back into the center of the bullseye.
Exactly. The shot was technically successful, but the success was entirely due to luck. The success did not manifest the archer's actual skill. Right. Now, possibility 2. The archer is an Olympic gold medalist. They assess the wind speed, they draw the bow with perfect form, they release smoothly, and they hit the bullseye entirely because of their immense skill and training.
Virtue epistemology takes this analogy and applies it directly to knowledge. A belief can be true by luck, like the wind blowing the arrow into the bullseye. That is the Gettier problem.
But knowledge occurs only when the truth of the belief is a direct manifestation of the believer's intellectual virtue or cognitive skill.
Yes, you don't just happen to be right. You are right because you are highly skilled at getting to the truth.
It's a very elegant way to tie the truth condition and the justification condition together. It's not just pasting them together like JTB plus X. It's saying the true belief must be a direct product of the justification.
Right.
But as I was reading the criticisms in the sources, it seems even virtue epistemology gets tangled up in complex Gettier cases, like the fake
How
barn.
do the fake barns always ruin everything?
Right. In the fake barns case, my visual skill is present. I am using my cognitive virtues perfectly, but the environment is so hostile and deceptive that I still end up relying on luck.
Which leads us to perhaps the most radical, ground-clearing rethink of all in modern philosophy. This is knowledge-first epistemology, pioneered by Timothy Williamson around the year 2000.
I have to admit, when I first read about this, my brain resisted it. It is a total paradigm shift. Up until now, Every single theory we've discussed, from JTB to reliabilism to virtue epistemology, assumes that knowledge is a compound.
Yes, that it's made of smaller parts.
Right. It's a molecule made of smaller atoms. It's made of belief plus truth plus justification plus whatever else we bolt onto it. Williamson says, what if we have been looking at this backwards for 2,000 years?
Williamson argues that knowledge is sui generis.
Sui generis.
Yeah, that's a Latin phrase meaning it is in a class by itself. It is a fundamental, unanalyzable mental state. You cannot build knowledge out of non-knowledge components.
The analogy I finally hit upon to translate this for myself is baking.
Oh, I like this.
For decades, analytic philosophers have been trying to take a fully baked cake, which represents knowledge, and they are trying to completely unbake it back into raw eggs, raw flour, and raw sugar.
Right. They want to isolate the belief, the truth, and the justification.
But Williamson is standing in the kitchen screaming, "Stop trying to unbake the cake. The cake is its own fundamental thing now."
That is a fantastic analogy. In fact, Williamson completely reverses the traditional equation. He says we shouldn't be trying to define knowledge in terms of belief. We should be defining belief in terms of knowledge.
Which feels totally backwards, but fascinating.
In his view, a belief is just a flawed, incomplete attempt to achieve the fundamental state of knowledge. If a belief fails to be knowledge, it's just a defective state. Knowledge is the baseline. It is the starting point of cognition, not the finish line.
It's like saying a circle isn't just a polygon with infinite sides. A polygon is just a broken, imperfect attempt at a circle. Knowledge comes first.
It's a breathtakingly bold move.
It is. Because it basically tells the entire Gettier fixing industry that they have been wasting their time for 40 years trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle that was never meant to be taken apart in the first place.
And while Western analytic philosophy has been tying itself in knots over these definitions, trying to unbake the cake, I think it's deeply illuminating to look at non-Western perspectives.
Yes.
The sources briefly touch upon the Indo-Tibetan Nyaya philosophy, and it offers a really refreshing contrast.
I found this section of the sources totally fascinating. The Nyaya school doesn't seem to suffer from a Gettier problem at all. Why is that?
Because they approach the fundamental concepts of truth and justification entirely differently. Thinkers in this tradition, like Gangesha Upadhyaya, viewed any true belief as knowledge.
Any true belief.
Right. They term this knowledge simpliciter. If your internal belief corresponds to external reality, it is knowledge, full stop, regardless of how you arrived at it.
Wait. Let me push back on that for a second. So
What?
even if it's a completely lucky guess, if I go back to my earlier example, and I guess Pluto has 5 moons just because 5 is my lucky number, Nyaya philosophy says I possess actual knowledge.
In the primary foundational sense, yes. Because for them, the need for logical justification doesn't arise at the primary level of basic cognition.
Where does it arise then?
It arises at a second metacognitive level. When one embarks on trying to know that they know, or when one tries to prove to someone else that they know.
Oh, I see.
If you want to validate your knowledge in a debate, then you absolutely need justification. But the knowledge itself, the raw cognitive contact with reality, is just the successful true belief.
That makes a lot of sense.
By rigidly separating the cognitive fact of knowing from the social or rational demand to validate that knowing, they bypass the epistemic luck paradox entirely.
That is a profound shift in perspective. It separates the internal cognitive state of being correct from the external social demand to prove you are correct to a skeptic. It really makes you realize how much Western philosophy is built around the idea of a courtroom, where everything must be defended with evidence.
It's a very combative way of looking at truth.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's take a breath and recap this incredible journey for everyone listening.
It has been a dense, winding path through the architecture of human thought.
We started with the comfortable, seemingly invincible, 2,000-year-old tripartite definition, justified true belief. We watched Edmund Gettier blow it to smithereens in 1963 using nothing but a hypothetical guy with 10 coins in his pocket.
The great disruptor.
We then took a tour of the philosophical Wild West, dodging fake barns, avoiding No God's fake rented Ford, and staring down robotic dogs hidden by real dogs, all to understand the chaotic, persistent nature of epistemic luck.
It's everywhere.
We saw the desperate attempts of the fixers to patch the definition with rules about no false premises and defeasibility, only to watch those fixes fail. And finally, we ended up questioning whether the concept of knowledge can even be broken down into parts at all, exploring external reliability, intellectual virtue, and the radical idea that knowledge must simply come first.
It is a dizzying progression. But if we pull back from the abstract thought experiments and connect this to the bigger picture, why does any of this matter to you, the listener, in your daily life?
Good question.
We live in an era of unprecedented information overload. We constantly consume sources, news articles, social media feeds, political speeches, even the encyclopedias we use for this deep dive.
Exactly. We are bombarded every single second of the day with claims to knowledge, people screaming at us that they have the facts.
And the Gettier problem, despite its incredibly abstract academic nature, is the ultimate workout for critical thinking. It forces us to slow down and ask, how are my beliefs tied to the truth?
Am I right because I have a truly reliable process? Or am I right because of a lucky coincidence or an echo chamber?
Am I relying on hidden false premises? Are there defeaters out there, pieces of context I haven't considered that would destroy my confidence if I knew them?
Understanding the extreme fragility of human justification is the best possible defense against dogma, fake news, and intellectual arrogance.
It keeps us humble. It reminds us that having evidence, and even being factually right, doesn't always mean we have the full, unvarnished picture of reality.
So to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on after this is over, we've spent this entire time talking about knowledge as a mental proposition, a sentence floating inside your head.
Right.
But what if that entire obsession is just a massive blind spot?
What do you mean by a blind spot?
I'm thinking of the anthropologist Barry Allen, who was briefly mentioned in our sources. He argues that the entire tradition of Western philosophy suffers from a severe propositional bias.
A propositional bias. Okay.
We treat knowledge as if it's purely conceptual, purely discursive, just words on a page or thoughts in a brain. But Allen suggests that true, deep knowledge might be something else entirely. He defines it as superlative artifactual performance.
Superlative artifactual performance. That is a heavy phrase.
Yes. He says knowledge is deeper than language and fundamentally different from belief. It is built into the very artifacts and structures we create.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It is the suspension bridge that spans a river and doesn't collapse under the weight of 1,000 cars. It is the satellite flawlessly orbiting the Earth, beaming down GPS data. It is the complex cultural practices that successfully sustain a society for centuries.
So the knowledge isn't just in the designer's head.
Exactly. The knowledge isn't just trapped in the engineer's head as a justified true belief. The knowledge is literally in the bridge. The bridge itself is the knowledge.
That is staggering. It completely upends the internalist versus externalist debate we were having earlier. It moves knowledge out of the human brain entirely and embeds it into the physical world.
Exactly. So the next time you confidently claim to know something, ask yourself, are you just holding a fragile, justified true belief in your mind, hoping it isn't a Gettier case? Or are you actively participating in a system of superlative performance? Do you hold the knowledge? Or, well, does the knowledge hold you?
A truly brilliant, unsettling question to end on.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolute pleasure unpacking the deeply weird, deeply fascinating architecture of reality with you. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep exploring the foundations of what you think you know, and we'll see you in the next installment.